The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. I suppose the best way to describe this film would be to call it a romance. A romance with war, with patriotism, with friendship, and really, it's about the search for youth. Colonel Blimp espouses a certain particular romanticism that is lost on modern films and storytelling and relationships in general. There's a romanticism only present in England during the 1940s, in the period right after the war. But the remarkable thing about this film is that it was made in 1943. It's a film that would be unthinkable at the time, and most certainly today. It's about Clive Candy over the period from his youth to his old age, played by the actor Roger Livesey. He's a very lively actor. He creates a character that most would say is very pompous, but he's really full of vigor and one of the great characters in the movies, larger than life. It's about him falling in love with a woman during the war, in the period of the early 1900s. He falls in love with a woman, and then she falls in love with his rival, a German officer. Well, she's probably more in love with him, but she gets married to the German officer. They have a duel, and it doesn't show the duel because that's irrelevant to the story. But needless to say, they both wind up in the hospital. They both have wounds, and they never see each other again for many years. As time goes by, Clive Candy recognizes that he made a mistake and he fell in love with this woman and he should have married her instead. So over the course of the film, he's looking for women to replace her. And there are 3 women in the film. He gets older at each stage of the movie, and he runs into the woman who's played by the same actress as Edith, is played by Deborah Kerr. The remarkable thing is she stays young at every point of the film, while the other 2 get older. And they both lost essentially the same love in their life. By the end of the film, Clive Candy realizes that he hasn't changed at all from his youth to his old age. And at many points of the film, he's chastising someone, a younger officer or something, with lines like, "I was a soldier even when you were a toss-up between a boy and a girl," that sort of thing. So it's about the child being the father of the man, being both of those, and the old knowing everything the youth knows and then some. It's a magical film, a very gorgeous film in Technicolor. Obviously, it's inspired by Citizen Kane at the time, but it also predates a lot of films like Lawrence of Arabia and Barry Lyndon and those kind of movies. It's a great story, one of the very best of Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, one of their very best. One of the best films ever written. It's full of witty dialogue. It proves that writing in a film, the real key is just anything that you can think of the characters can say, and they're not holding anything back. And there's a great, rich history in this film. It was made right in the period in the middle of World War II, and is not so much a political statement, but it was taken as a political statement at the time. I think my favorite exchange in the movie is when Theo comes back from Germany at the onset of World War II, and he's questioned by the English officer. He's cross-examined, and the English officer wants to know why he didn't come to England sooner. Why didn't he leave Germany in 1933? He says most of the Germans figured out by 1933 that Hitler was bad news. And Theo, he says, well, at the time it took me 8 months too long to figure that out. And as the English officer continues to press him, he asks him, don't you think that was a little too long? And he says, with all due respect, sir, the English took about 5 years too long. And it's statements like that that had real ramifications in England at the time. Winston Churchill didn't want anyone to see the film. So the colorful stories and lives in this movie, certainly the way the story is regaled is magical. It's very much reminiscent of Citizen Kane that was made just 2 years before. But as I said, it's a forerunner of a lot of the movies to come after it, certainly in England. And we haven't seen anything like this kind of filmmaking since. So it's a great fantasy story, and it's a very rich story about a man and about youth and all that jazz.